Hello, mathematicians. Welcome to math class with me, Miss Taylor. I'm glad you're here. So let's see, today we need our fact practice packet, like usual, textbook, workbook, paper, and a pencil, or you can use your whiteboard. I know I like to use my whiteboard. So we are going to keep practicing a little bit with multiplication today. We started our new unit yesterday on multiplying. And we talked about when we multiply, the groups must be equal. So yesterday, we talked about how multiplication is kind of the same as repeated addition. So we are going to learn a little bit about multiplying, a little bit more about multiplying today using something called an array. But we'll talk about that in just a minute. But just a quick review before we get started on our fact practice. So we talked about when you have some equal groups. Let's see, here's some equal groups. So here we have a group of 3, and a group of 3, and a group of 3, and a group of 3. So we have 3 circles, and 3 circles, and 3, and 3. Now we know that we can add these together to find the answer, right? We know this can be 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. So we can use, this is called repeated addition. We just kind of keep adding however many groups we have. 3 here, plus 3, plus 3, plus 3. And then we can get our answer. Let's see, 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 3 more is 9, plus 3 more, what is it? Yeah, it's 12, isn't it? So we can use repeated addition to get the answer. Totally fine. But there is another way that we can, or another thing that we can do to get the answer, and that is called multiplying. And we multiply when the groups are equal. And we can see our groups are equal because there's the same amount in each group. So we can use multiplication to get our answer. And when we multiply, this little symbol that we use for multiplication, it looks kind of like an X, or almost like a plus sign that's been kind of turned on its end. So this is our multiplication symbol. Sometimes we call it times. And that's how we kind of read this. 3 times 4. 3 times 4 equals 12. So that means you have either 3 groups of 4 or 4 groups of 3. You'd actually get the same answer. So anyway, just a quick little review about multiplying. This is what we learned about yesterday, that multiplying is the same as repeated addition. And it just is a little bit faster, especially once we get to have lots of groups. We can multiply if the groups are equal. We can multiply if the groups are equal. All right, so we're going to keep learning a little bit about multiplication today. This was yesterday. And then today we're going to learn about something called an array. But before we do that, let's take a look at our fact practice packet for today. Today is January 5th, and we are doing a little bit of review. We're on page 8. We are reviewing a little bit with subtracting today. It's always good for our brains, always a prudent thing to do a little bit of review for things that we've learned before to make sure that our minds are not kind of forgetting how to do this. So I've done the first few for you. When you get over here, it might be a good idea to draw your line to separate. We always start in the ones place. We always start at the top. 1 minus 6. If I have 1, can I take away 6? Nope. Got to go next door and get some more. So I'm going to go next door. I'm going to cross off this 9 and make it an 8. Now I have 8 10s because I've moved 1 10 over here. And then I already had this 1. So this becomes an 11 because I scooted a 10 over here. Now wait a second. Do we still have 91? Do we? Well, let's see. This is 80 plus 11. 80 plus 11. Well, look at that. We still have 91. Yeah, so we're not really changing the number. We're just giving it a different name. We're renaming it or regrouping it. We're giving it kind of a different group. All right, now we can do 11 minus 6 is 5. And 8 minus 8 is 0. So if you want to put that 0 there, you can. Otherwise, you don't really need to. All right, so you're going to practice. And I would say it's probably a good idea maybe to do one row and then check your answers on the back. And then you can move on to the next row. Kind of do this. I would pause here and check your answers. Do a few more, pause here and do your check your answers. That would be a really good idea. All right, so second graders, today we are going to look in our textbooks at page 92, and we're going to learn about something called an array. But you know what I noticed is that we kind of have an array right in our fact practice packet. Because when we have an array, this is sort of a fancy word for when we have things that are lined up in rows and columns. In other words, rows go side to side, horizontal, and then columns go up and down. And I've noticed that in our fact practice packet, we have a row. Here we have a row of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have a row of 5 problems, and then we have another row of 5 problems, and then we have another row of 5 problems, another row of 5, another row of 5. We also have columns. So columns, just like you have a column that would hold up a building, kind of those big stone columns that are sometimes holding up old buildings, those go up and down the vertical way. And I see a column here, a column here, column here, column here, and a column here. So that's kind of cool. So like I said, we're going to learn a little bit about arrays today. And an array is where we organize things or pieces into rows. And rows go this way. Rows and columns. And columns go this way. So columns are kind of the up and down way. So this would be the, let's see, what's that called again? Oh yes, vertical. Vertical means up and down. So columns, you can see a column here and a column here and a column here and a column here. And then the rows go side to side, horizontal. So maybe you can think about why would we put things into an array? Like if you had some marbles or some little pieces of candy that you were counting, why would you put them into an array? Why not just scatter them all about? What do you think? So like if I gave you a bunch of cool little rocks and I said, oh, look at these cool little rocks I found. How many are there? And then you would say, well, I guess I just have to count each one. There's 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, did I count that one already? 11. Oh. Yeah, and we might get kind of confused when things are kind of just scattered all around. So it makes sense. It's a prudent idea to put things into kind of nice, neat rows and columns. So in our textbook, on the bottom of page 92, we have some arrays. And like I said, an array is kind of just a fancy word for when we line things up into rows and columns. So let's take a look at this one here. We have some fish. And these fish are lined up into 2 rows. Here's a row, and here's a row. And remember, the rows go horizontally, side to side. And the reason that it is prudent for us to line things up into rows is that it really helps our brains to see that there are 4 here and there are 4 down below. It kind of helps us to organize and to see things clearly, to see how many are in each group. So we can think of it as here's a group of 4 and here's a group of 4. Or we could think about it in columns. We could think, well, here's a column of 2, and there's a column of 2, and there's another column of 2, and there's another column of 2. So it just sort of helps our brains to kind of see things clearly. Almost like how here, when we see that we have an equal group here, and an equal group here, and an equal group here, it just sort of helps our brain to make sense of information. Now, when we have an array, we can make two multiplication equations. We can think, well, I have 4 rows of 2, so that would be 4 times 2. Or you can think of, well, I have 4 columns of 2. Did I say 4 rows? We don't have 4 rows, Ms. Taylor. We only have 2 rows. Let me try that again. We have 4, no, we don't have 4 rows. We have 2 rows, 1, 2. Whoops, I'm freezing here. Let me just pause this just a sec here.